Pedro, have you started the meeting? Because I cannot hear you.
Hi, Lisa. Hello. Can you hear
I
me?
can
Okay?
hear you. Thanks.
Yeah, sorry. I had my
Yeah,
my
just
main
that one.
my main guy's on mute.
I could be a student.
Oh, and Tana.
Oh,
and
mine.
Molly. Oh, yeah, thank you for unmuting. So we'll get going here. Trying to coordinate Zoom and online. I mean, Zoom and in person. Turn this guy so you can see. What's happening in the room. Okay. All right. So Tana, just keep me up to date if I'm doing something stupid here for some people bound to happen. Welcome everybody to the first meeting of 2022 of the Big Hole Watershed Committee. We met in January just as a board. We'll start with just our regular introduction so everyone knows who's who, and then we'll jump into our agenda. Is this thing too loud? A little bit. Okay. All right. I'm Pedro Marquez. I'm the Executive Director of the Big Hole Watershed Committee. I'll go left.
Any Bowler, Butte. Tom Bowler, Butte.
Jim Hagan, Martha Ranch from Dillon.
Diane Patton, Wisdom.
Roy Morris, George Grant, Trojan Limited.
John Steinbach with Sun Mountain Lumber. John Jackson, rancher from Jackson, also Beaverhead County Commission.
Jay Impact from Melrose.
Dean Peterson, rancher up for Big Hole. Mark Cambridge, rancher, Divided.
Matt Norberg, Montana DNRC.
Good evening, everyone. Molly Ryan, Wisdom District Ranger, Beaverhead-Deerlodge National Forest.
Davenport Programs Manager for the Big Hole Watershed Committee.
I'm Hannah Knopf, Associate Director of the Big Hole Watershed Committee.
All right. Okay, we'll always sit record that, and I'll get you set up here. Hello to everyone on Zoom. We typically, just for our technological capacity, typically don't do a whole round of introductions. Just want to welcome Lisa Timchak, who's the new BVRD supervisor, who's visiting with us, and I appreciate that. And Jarrett, hello, and looks like Jim Olson and a lot of UM Western students as well. Thank you all for joining with us today. And we'll get going with Matt. All right. Am I sharing the right thing?
I'm sharing.
Okay, no, if you can share, that's better.
Oh, is that blurry?
It is, yeah.
Something looks like a gangling horse here.
One of them's my power cord, but yeah, that is blurry. Mine is not blurry. Tan, is it?
It does look kind of blurry.
There's something here that looks like it fell off.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, this is just my power cord. I have enough power. Thanks. Oh, that's all right. We'll make it work. We won't ask you to read this.
You adjusted that one?
This thingy?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did.
That didn't work.
Weird. So what we're looking at, that's my screen, huh? Yeah, it is. Okay. Well, you can, at least you can read it off of there. Yeah. You can make it bigger. Yeah. All right, hopefully everyone can. Oh, man, smart screen. Oh. Wow. All right, well, it's been a while since I gave a presentation. I think it was November since our last meeting. Well, currently, I mean, I think you guys know kind of what's going on around here. NRCS, Natural Resource Conservation Service, is reporting precipitation for the Big Hole is about 96% of median conditions. And again, I mentioned this at last meeting, we just went into a new period of normals. So that 96% is, if you were to go back, say, mid 2000, something like that, it's not apples to apples. So just take that into account a little bit. Snow water equivalent, currently 91%. From those new meeting conditions, just kind of recapping from the last meeting. December and the beginning of January provided much needed boost. We were down quite a bit at that time. So we brought things up quite a bit in the Big Hole. Currently, we are slightly below where we were last year in terms of snowpack, but we're almost identical in terms of total precipitation from last year. And I'll go over this a little bit more, but predictions favor above average precipitation in March and below average temperature. So that's a good thing for us. We've got, a couple storms coming through the next, 10 days or so. We'll see how much precip we actually get out of this. We still have approximately 2 months until the median snowpack peak, which is roughly April 17th, give or take. And then I've been talking about the satellite imagery we call Hipsami SWE. So the satellite imagery indicates a normal snowpack at the higher elevations, but kind of a diminished mid-elevation snowpack, kind of in that 7,000 to 8,500 foot range, which is probably not any, it's probably not, I'm trying to think of the word, well, it's most likely due to, those average snow or average temperatures we've had, over January and the beginning of February, and some sunny days. We're starting to melt off that mid-elevation snow a little bit. So that's kind of where that mid-elevation snow is lacking a little bit. And then I always kind of like to give, high elevation, that dark horse snow tail, because that's kind of a driver for as we go through later season. So we're currently at 20.2 inches of SWE, and we're about 92% of median at that upper snow tail site. Oops. So here's just a graph. This is the Big Hole in general, and I like to, I put up 2021 just to kind of give comparison. So it's kind of hard to see in here, but this black line right here, this is our current. Blue line here is last year's, and then if you can see that this light green, that's kind of our average, I think. So we're just slightly below where we were last year and a little bit below the average conditions. Again, let's hope for March to produce some more snow in the basin. Let's see if I can just make that. So this is that satellite imagery kind of modeled snowpack called Hipsami SWE. And you can see here what I was just talking about before. So our high elevation snowpack is looking good, but then as we drop down to kind of that mid-range stuff through here, this is where we're below average. So that's kind of where we're drawing down that 91% instead of the 100%. And this, I actually like to show this because it gives. I'm here a little bit. Stand back. anyways, I like to show this because this is, I feel like it's a little more representative of what we have actual snowpack in the basin. Because the other one where we're looking at that graph, they're just point snow-tail sites. So we don't get a complete picture of what's going on. This is a combination of snow-tail and satellite modeled imagery. So it takes account the whole basin and it shows where the lacking or abundance of snow is. So just another way to look at this in general. You would see all this purple line outside of this gray line. The gray line is kind of the average.
That's the average. Right?
Yeah.
How would you, yeah, would you represent, would you be able to see that through the blue?
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of see it like right here. There's a little bit right there. Yep. And there, this is kind of a new product. So I've been talking with one of our guys in my office who's working with the developers on this. So we're kind of trying to work on some different things. I'd like to be able to compare, show like graphs of comparisons where it's, you know, like 2021 or 2011, things like that. They're working on it. It's a new product, but I like it because it kind of shows you a different perspective on snowpack itself. And again, here is precip. Again, we're just below average for this time of year, and we're right at where we were last year in terms of total precipitation. One thing that I want to point out is early season precip. You know, we were running about average. This black line over here is right on that median or that average line. However, what makes me a little nervous is that we started off the water year coming off of really bad conditions. Soil moisture conditions were terrible. And even though we're average, I'm just concerned that we're not gonna be able to rebound from those soil moisture conditions. And when we did start getting above average precip, ground is already frozen. So we didn't really soak in a lot of that moisture. It's a lot of it's snowpack, probably up high too, but just be aware. I mean, I think you guys all know how bad last year was, and going into this year, those soil moisture conditions could be pretty tough to rebound from. So it's could be an interesting year again.
That moisture will go into the ground because that frost level is only like 2 inches deep down here. I mean, you can look at places, south facing slope, it's catching that sun all the time. So I don't know if I worry quite as much as what you say.
I sure hope you're right. I mean, I'll trust you on that. Yeah.
Okay, I open my big mouth.
I like your optimism. That's, yeah.
So that doesn't happen. What's that? Don't get water.
So I put this up just to kind of show the state in general, snowpack conditions, snow water equivalent. So obviously here's Jefferson Basin. I think that says 88%. Yeah. So you can see east of the divide, with the exception of Sun, Teton, and Marias, you know, they're all kind of doing about the same. Definitely lower in snowpack than the west side of the divide. And those storms have just been kind of hanging on that west side and really not a whole lot happening down on the east side. I started showing this map too. This is the drought status. This is updated monthly, coordination with State Library, DNRC, and a bunch of other players, National Weather Service, things like that. And right now, Beaverhead-Deerlodge, Silverville counties are all listed as extremely dry in the D3 category. I know that sounds bad, but it's actually a little bit of improvement from the start of the water year, which was a D4, which is extreme drought. So there's a silver lining. I mean, we have increased just a touch in terms of drought conditions. The 18 to 14 day temperature and precip. Like I said, we got some stuff coming in. March is, from what I've been hearing, March is supposed to produce some weather. We're looking at temperatures, below average temperatures and precip. We're kind of in this weird little band right here where we're in this near normal. I don't know if I would buy that per se. I mean, I think it's, you know, it's really localized how we're gonna look, but the rest of Montana in general is looking like it'd be slightly above average precip. And then as we move down and we look at our, you know, kind of our month outlook for precip, we're looking at above average conditions for precip. So that's good news. Let's hope we can capture some of that snowpack. And as we move forward into, you know, the spring months, that's going to be real telling because right now we are still in this La Nina advisory, and I've mentioned this before. We've been in this back-to-back La Nina called double dip. Typically for Montana, that means that we have the second year we have wetter than normal conditions. Well, it's kind of playing out like last year a little bit, where we were in this La Nina and we thought, oh, this is going to be great. We're going to get more moisture, colder temps. And we did last year in February, it was bumper, and then tap shut off. So I don't know if it's a seasonal thing or, you know, we're kind of, hopefully we're moving into that wetter time period in March. However, as we move into that spring condition, we have 56% chance of moving into those neutral conditions. And that's exactly what happened last year. We went to basically early spring with about an average snowpack, and we melted out early. And then the tap just shut off, with the exception of like a late May storm. So I don't want to be completely negative about this, but things are kind of setting up a little bit to be like last year. So that those neutral conditions, it's hard to tell, extremely variable. They could be extremely dry and hot like last year. They could be normal. You could have big events. It's really hard for the predictions to tell what we're going to have. So let's err on the positivity. I like what you said, and we'll go with that. Any questions? The what? It was kind of, I think it started around the 20th, and it went just at the beginning of March. And it was cold and super snowy. I'm trying to remember if we broke records or not. It was really close in terms of SWE, or like a 2.5 week period. Okay.
All right.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt. Okay. Let's move into what's going on my desk. Tana, am I sharing or are you sharing? You can check. It's just one. Yeah, you can share. It's just one slide.
That's fine. I spent 8 minutes of not sharing, so as long as I can take minutes.
Oh, okay. Okay. I'm, you know, for me, generally speaking, I'm starting this year with I think a lot of just opportunity out there is what I'm seeing, with infrastructure money and ARPA. There's just a lot of federal dollars coming in for a whole range of activities and work that we do. So I'm keeping my eye on that. We started with the ARPA irrigation proposals. I'm going to try again this year to let you guys know there's a bunch of money coming in for irrigation. It's going to keep coming in. Like, tell us what the needs are. We'll get them. We'll get the contractors out. We'll get some cost estimates. And the more we have kind of ready to go projects, the easier it is for us to go get the money and get them done. I did this last year. It was about 10 months of telling the group every month that there's irrigation money coming, and still 3 days before the grant's due, I'm getting phone calls like, oh, is it too late? I got a project. Like, let's not do that again. Hey guys, there's money. we'll go get it for you, but give us a heads up. But anyway, so, you know, in a short span of time, we got, you know, $1.2 million of projects, you know, costed out and got a proposal in. That one is, it taps out at 500,000 per request. So that's, you know, 700,000 of matching dollars that we would try to bring to the table. And there's sources to go get that. So we'll see what happens with this first round of ARPA irrigation money. Deepening partnerships is something I'm real excited about. You know, we've gone from kind of, you know, chasing the projects and the dollars for a specific project, and we're still doing that, but we're doing it now with partnership agreements in place. So we have one set up with the Forest Service for the work on elkhorn. We just found out we have a Bureau of Reclamation grant that's going to kick in also to continue the soils characterization work up there. And, you know, as you start growing that momentum and showing some work and some progress, all of a sudden people get excited and they start finding pots of money. So that partnership agreement is about to get another 25,000 added to it. The forest is real eager to kind of keep the momentum going. So that's all great. You know, on that note, I've been trying to sit in on the Beaverhead-Deerlodge working group. That's a great kind of collaborative that's trying to, you know, stay in touch with what the forest is doing and chime in and support on projects. They asked me to sit on the committee, and I'm just kind of committed out at this point. So I just too much. And I feel like I was just going to get pulled in too many different directions. That said, if anybody from the board is interested in sitting in on a monthly meeting of Beaverhead-Deerlodge working group, that is a possibility. So don't be shy and let me know. We can get you guys plugged in. Let's see, we have the BLM is also now interested in doing a partnership agreement with us to continue work on the Eastern Pioneers. So we're pushing that forward, and Ben will cover kind of the details of those projects. But with the Mount Hagen work, we are contracted with the NRD still. We'll be with them for the next year and a half probably. And then the idea is Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, they've actually put in our budget ask for the following fiscal year 24. We're actually getting kind of our continued work in the Mount Hagen part of the Superfund written into their full budget ask. So just kind of getting our work kind of really peppered into the more of the structure of how these agencies are operating and seeing us as real kind of partners from the get-go. So I like that. It definitely reduces that stress load of constantly chasing every new grant and putting a lot of time and energy into every new opportunity, right? Which is kind of the direction we want to head in. Other than that, on just some notes on just communication things that are improving and that we have a lot of emphasis and work going towards. Somehow something happened where YouTube just exploded. We had about 4,500 people had watched that Hold Back Snowpack video, and then within 3 weeks it jumped to 55,000 people. Something about their algorithms were doing something right, and then all our other videos, because of that, folks are hanging out and checking out all our other videos. Less the meeting minutes, but the project videos and stuff. It's really capturing some attention. That's exciting, and who knows what will come of it. Young people have figured out a way to make money off of this stuff. I don't know how to do that, but if anyone has any ideas, I'm open. I want to just probably mention it at our governing board meeting, but we were able to support some changes to fishing regulations that had recently been changed by the commission. There was just a general consensus that the dates that they selected for fishing closures on the big hole were off of what's realistic and what's actually going to be beneficial for the resource. So we were able to, we put in a letter, and, you know, I think our influence was able to sway some of the commissioners to just make a modest change to when the river was going to open and when it was going to shut down to correspond better with brown trout. We'll see how that goes. It's a very experimental kind of change that they're proposing. they're trying to see if these changes and restrictions affect the brown trout populations. We'll see where that goes. Tana is working on updating the drought management plan based on the meeting that the subcommittee had. No major changes, but we are going to add in, it'll be mentioned in the plan, but we're improving and kind of standardizing how we communicate out about drought. So irrigators, you can expect, we're going to try to roll out kind of a text message based application where you guys will get on your phones, you'll just get a heads up of where we're at on kind of a weekly basis, and just standardizing and formalizing who we communicate to and how often, just to keep it easy for us. Last year was a little hectic. My ear kind of got burned out from talking to so many people, trying to, figure out how to manage in really tough times. So that is going on. I'll announce it at the next meeting as well, but the state is revising its whole drought management plan, and there's a regional drought meeting March 24th. I'll make sure to get those details. I think there's a Zoom link, and it's an in-person. It can be in person, I believe. We'll see. Couple more things, bear with me. Streamgage funding, as you all know, I was hitting this hard for a couple years after Jen discovered that nobody knew how we paid for gauges in this state. She kind of put together the spreadsheet that got everybody realizing that, well, we kind of don't know what we're doing here as a state with this infrastructure. I had a good call with Senator Wellborn, who also didn't really know how the gauges were paid for. And he's very much interested. He's trying to find an avenue where we could potentially get all of the state's stream gauge funding needs into just a general budget so that we're not funding critical infrastructure with $25 donations from individuals. It seems like this is like roads and bridges and highways, or knowing how much water we have in our rivers is kind of critical. So I'm just slowly pushing to see what we can do there. See if we can get the 2023 legislative session set up to, just kind of lock that in. Working on board development and growth. I've been talking to board members, and folks are reaching out and identifying, great residents and partners and people that could add to the board. We lost Ray Weaver in January. He's had health conditions for a while, so we had to let him go. So that's exciting. We're continuing on that. And, it's all about consensus and keeping this community of water-related people interested in water in the big hole together and moving in the same direction. I think we can do a lot of good, and we can obviously influence some decision-making when we submit letters and, say we're in support of this. I didn't put this in here, but I have to say this. There is a deadline for a public comment period on the 30 by 30 initiative, the America the Beautiful, which is this national initiative. It is not a federal land grab, in case that's what you've heard. At least that's not the intent of what's written in the documentation. I'm going to propose that the Watershed Committee submit a letter to that public comment period. I think that the message that the groups like ours, conservation districts, sort of the local level groups, need to be empowered to be participating and active in what happens with 30 by 30, rancher groups, local led groups really need to be given the capacity to make conservation happen on the ground. Otherwise, what you might have is a bunch of federal money just getting bottlenecked and never actually getting to where it needs to go. So I think that a group like ours could potentially, sway how that program gets rolled out. It's still very much in development stage. So I'll be reaching out to the board with some ideas for that. And yeah, and then we've got a couple good speaking engagements coming up. Tana will be presenting at the annual meeting of the MWCC. Ben and I both have presentations at Montana Stormwater Conference in May in Missoula. I just came back from Saratoga, Wyoming, and presented to 2 conservation districts that were meeting for the first time in 2 years. Just really kind of showing them the type of work that we're doing, the restoration work, and folks were really excited about what's going on down here, and took a lot of cues from our work, and it was great. It was a great trip, and got it all paid for. So I was happy to take one for the team there and just sit in the Saratoga hot springs for a couple days. Any questions? Yes.
I would just touch on that, you talking about Beaverhead-Deerlodge, working really very close to down on those needs, you know, they're getting behind a project on the Basin Creek watershed.
Yeah.
I don't know, you guys are familiar with it?
We submitted a letter in support of that. Yep. That Basin Creek work. Yep. Yep. No, and that's how it's important, because that's where I find out, what folks are doing, and there's usually something that touches on the big hole being discussed in that meeting. So it's important for us to have kind of eyes and ears there. Yeah. Yeah. And that project just beat us out in the LSR applications. So they were among the top 2 and we were the 3rd. So we got, unless something changes with the budget, with the federal budget, we got capped out because the state allocation sort of, we're just right below that cap. So we'll see. But I was happy to lose to a really important project like that one. If it was a different project, I would have been pissed. Okay, I think that's it for me. Who do we got next? Wildlife? Steering committee. Does the steering committee have anything to report?
Well, then, Beaverhead-Deerlodge working group on right, and schedule the.
He keeps the committee, commission. Okay. All right. Steering committee. What? Nothing is good in this group. Nothing, and dead silence means good. Okay. Tana, wildlife? You gonna take it from there?
All right, I've got a couple of things to add to Pedro's, what Pedro said really quick. So I've got a card here for Ray Weaver, first of all, for anybody who wants to sign it, just to thank him for his service. He was on the board for, I didn't even know, probably like 15 years, long time. Was he one of the founding members, Jim? Okay, yeah, quite a while he was on the board, so pass that around. And then, I also wanted to mention we have coffee over there, but if anybody wants water, you can just go in the kitchen and grab some from the sink. And I know it's really cold in here, but we will crank the heat at the break because it's really loud. And then, yeah, and about just to tag onto Pedro's little section on partnerships, I just wanted to mention that as of today, I'm the vice chair of Montana Watershed Coordination Council. So
Right.
it's kind of cool. I had been secretary for last year, so. All right, anyway, moving on. Okay, before I go into wildlife, I just wanted to talk really quickly about this proposal that we received from Arcadia Publishing. They reached out to us about, they want us to author a history book on the Big Hole, which at first we thought was, totally outside of our mission. But after talking to them a little bit, we thought maybe we should think about it. So it's part of their Images of America series. There are 128 pages. They're almost all photos with some captions and context. And they handle the publishing, printing, marketing, sales. Oh yeah, Ben's gonna pass some of these around. So these are the series that I was talking about. They pretty much handle the whole thing, and they guide you through the writing process. So it's something that we've been thinking about. Time is somewhat a consideration, and funding for our time. But just something we talked about is potentially formatting each chapter to be about a natural resource, timber, water, land, minerals, and then lead up to where the watershed is now and BHWC's role in the watershed. And it could potentially be a good opportunity for us to connect with community members. And then the author also gets proceeds, royalties, so they get about $2 per book. So we can put that into a conservation fund. So we've been kind of talking about it for a couple of months, but haven't had a whole lot of time to dedicate to it. And I just wanted to put it out to our board and see if anybody has any questions or comments.
Sounds like it's a great project for folks that know the history and have, you know, relatives that have great old photos and, you know, potential opportunity. We would be in a sort of cat herding, chicken wrangling sort of position of just trying to collect these images and write the captions and put them together, right? So we're open to putting our time towards that if there is, you know, desire to go that direction. It'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, I really like the idea. Just, like I said, finding the time is consideration, but as with all projects. All right. So moving on to wildlife, we will have our carcass removal and composting service available soon, very soon. John should be moving, our driver, he should be moving the truck up from the Red Rock Lakes Refuge this week, and then we'll be ready to go. So John, he's a Wisdom local. He drives a dump truck on loan for the refuge, March through May each year, or February as needed, and picks up carcasses from local ranchers and then takes them to our compost site, which is next to the MPT shop right outside of Wisdom. And the service is provided free, although donations are accepted. And you can, I put John's number on there. You can also text carcass to 26989 for more information, or it's also on our website, or you can reach out to me. Or I also have these magnets back there with all the information. And just a side note, we also provide carcass removal in the spring to stage pig ranchers through the Centennial Valley Association. They reimburse us for that. And then we'll have our Upper Big Hole Range Rider program again this year. That's July through September. And we're prepping for that. And then we have funding through the NRCS for the Conservation Innovation Grant. And some of the partners in that grant are doing a study on range riding, and so we'll be looking at doing that this year and meeting with the producers to see if anyone's interested in doing that study. So yeah, that's all I've got for today. Oh, actually, that's not all I've got. I have some toolkit supplies back there for livestock loss prevention. There's some books and other items, and anybody who wants to check them out or borrow anything, just go ahead and grab it, and there's a clipboard. You can put your name and information on it and bring it back to us later on. So feel free. And that's all I've got, unless anybody has any questions.
Yeah, are the fishing game and getting monitoring sage grouse and put on collars?
I haven't heard anything otherwise. I think so. Have you heard anything, Benjamin?
That's what I think they put all the collars out that they intended to, and you know, birds were dying, and then I think there was only like one bird left with the backpack on. That might have been it. I don't want to speak to you.
I don't know, but I'll ask Vanna for the minutes.
It's pretty important. I mean, on the average River Lakes, and you know, area of fishing game.
We dealing with the fishing game, done a lot of monitoring, and we have a collaborative on the Sand Creek area, and they've identified 200,000 acres of late Cyril mountain sage, and they've written an EA to manage 30,000 acres every 10 years, no more than 4,500 acres a year. and using prescriptions, whether it's chemical or spike or prescribed fire to break up the huge mass of late zero areas in mosaic fashion. And the monitoring shows that those birds, 92% of them nest within 2.1 miles of the lek, and it was 3.8 miles. So that's huge, and they use that in helping them, allowing us to get a little closer to those leks when we do the work. So the monitoring is important, and it's changing the science and understanding of the sage grouse and where they go and what they need. So it's important.
Yeah. I know that they're tying a little bit of sage grouse money to the Sage Smith Springs project that we're doing, because the biggest lake is kind of right there near it. So yeah, that's important. The folks that I visited in Wyoming, boy, that's real sage grouse country there. They really struggle with those, and they talked about lots of things we've learned about here as far as the ravens and the eagles are the ones that are really taking them out pretty big time. All right, that's it for wildlife. Thanks, Jim. Okay, Mr. Laporte and restoration, and then we'll take a quick break after that. And I think Tana is going to share on Zoom, but I'll keep you here. What? Where'd you go? All right.
All right, guys. One of the things I like to do during this first meeting of the year is kind of bring you guys up to speed on what my program will look like through the 2022 season. Give you guys a quick summary and flavor of the restoration work that we'll be doing across the watershed this year, and yeah, give you guys kind of some footing to stand on for the next time we meet. I give updates, you kind of are up to speed on some of the things I'm talking about here. So on the list of the projects that we will implement this year on the left-hand side, in no particular order, and then the map shows kind of a visual representation of where the projects are in the watershed. And yeah, so we'll start off with our Anaconda Uplands work with the Natural Resources Damage Program. Pedro touched on it, but we just signed a new task order with them. We have other contracts coming down the pipeline with Fish, Wildlife, and Parks and NRD. So this work of restoring those smelter impacted uplands and those headwater tributaries of the Big Hole will continue. And for 2022, that work will consist of similar work as last year. A lot of maintaining of the stuff that we've done in the past, maintenance of that work, a lot of low-tech restoration process-based type of stuff, seeding, fertilizing, kind of the whole kind of toolbox that we use for that area. So we'll have MCC crews out there again this year, different labor crews out there, kind of off and on throughout the season. I do have a bullet point up here. It says compliance monitoring. This is just essentially a task that we as in the Big Hole Watershed Committee are responsible for, working with the NRD to show EPA essentially the work that we're doing up there is working and it's sustainable. And so we need to do this monitoring to kind of get the check off that what we're doing is working. So we will be doing that this year. We started that last year. Pedro and I will be up there doing some more of that monitoring work this year. Is Tana sharing the screen? Okay, cool. Next slide, please. Okay, all right. Oh, cool. We'll move to the Upper Oregon Creek Restoration Project now. This Upper Oregon Creek is just across the highway on 569 from all that NRD uplands work. And so essentially what we're seeing here is the same impacts. This smelting, the logging that happened in the early 1860s. And so we're seeing similar impairments, and so we're going to kind of tackle it with the same restoration approach. And just the video, the photo on the left here kind of shows what some of those uplands look like. They're untreated. They're untreated because this was a piece of privately owned property just a few years ago. And FWP just bought it, and that's kind of given us the door to walk through to treat this area. But essentially, these rills, just like all these other impacted lands from the smelter, are transporting sediment down into these larger gully networks. Those larger gully networks are flushing the sediment into the stream. And that's exactly what we're seeing here in Upper Oregon Creek. And the photo down low is just an example of many areas of the upper portions of Oregon Creek that are just completely sediment choked. And so our goal here, similar to the NRD work, is to revegetate these upland slopes and capture the sediment in the uplands, and then capture the sediment in the stream as well. And this map right here just kind of gives you guys a representation of what the project looks like. I don't need to go into detail on it, but these are going to be in-stream structures, essentially post-assisted log structures and BDAs. We've done a ton of that. There's a red polygon here that may be hard to see. This is going to be 25 acres of aerial fertilization and seeding. And we're going to do a bunch of aspen enhancement work, which I'll touch on here in a bit. So hope to get crews out working in Upper Oregon here early spring before the high water hits. We'll get some of those in-stream structures in to start capturing a lot of this sediment that we're seeing in the stream. All right, another upper project. I've been touching on this one for a while now. It's kind of taken some time to get it up and going, but I know for sure this summer we're going to do this Upper French Gulch Fish Passage project. I made this map the other day, just giving you guys an idea. This is 569, again, on the Mount Hagen Wildlife Management Area. And these are the reaches that we treated in French Gulch in 2016 and 2017. And this is where our project will be this year. So it's above all the work that we did. I think it's going to be very complementary to the work that we did and all the work we're doing in the watershed. Essentially, same story, mining and there's a ton of placer mining and hydrologic mining. It caused this 30-foot cascade and it is not allowing fish passage up it. There's also a perched culvert that is impeding fish passage up there. So what we're going to come in and do is basically redo the stream and build some step pools and a fish passage structure in here. And this is just a part of the designs that we're working with Morrison and Merrily on. The work is going to consist of a lot of strategic rock placement, building pools to make sure that those fish can rest in the pools, they can get over the steps and get into about 1.7, around 2 miles of headwater tributary. And both of these projects, really all of these projects in the French Creek drainage are going to be very complementary to the FWP fish reintroductions and restoration that they've been doing over the years.
You know, they have tracked.
Yeah, I think so. Jim Olson said that they need to do one more little round of rotenone treatment, but I didn't get any clarity on if they were going to reintroduce. I think they're going to do one more round of rotenone treatments up there. Okay, I touched on this earlier. This aspen work that we're working with Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks on. This is Upper Oregon Creek. This is the same project site I was just talking about. There's about 35 acres of aspen enhancement work that we're going to do in the project area. And it's going to dovetail just very nicely with the sediment capture work that we're doing in that area too. So what we're going to do is free up a ton of the aspen that's getting encroached upon by all the lodgepole up there, use that byproduct, use that slash, and fill in these gullies. The same thing is going to happen on the North Fork, California. And this is a lot of the work we've done with the NRD program here. About 145 acres of this aspen work. Again, these yellow lines kind of delineate where we're going to ideally put a ton of this byproduct, this forestry slash into these gullies. So I think it's really neat, really good habitat enhancement project, as well as kind of meeting our objectives to capture that sediment on the landscape. And hey, we have a forestry project going on, right? Hey,
We asked for one, took us.
yeah, we got a forestry project, right?
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Cutting down a lot of trees this summer. That one, I'm working with Jason Park, the forester, and we're getting the bid package together. Hope to get that out in the public soon so we can get a contractor hired. Pedro mentioned the Smith Sage Springs restoration project. It's a little visualization. It's just north of Wisdom. And this project came to us from Jim McGee, and he was counting these let counts during that survey, found this very degraded system, the Smith Sage Springs Creek, I guess is what we're calling it. But essentially there's these ginormous head cuts. This is the biggest head cut. And here's Jarrett Payne here for reference, but very degraded system. And essentially what it's doing is it's dropping the groundwater level and it's changing the vegetation composition up here. And so what we're going to do is basically restore this very degraded and incised portion of Smith Sage Creek. And we're also going to conserve this very robust mesic kind of wet meadow habitat area that pronghorn love, sage grouse love, critters love it. So yeah, it's a little bit more complicated than that. And that's what I'm trying to visualize here with you guys. This is design sheet, working with Confluence Consulting on that right now. And we're getting ready to finalize those designs shortly and get this one kind of ready to get to permitting. So hoping for fall implementation on this one. Another really cool part about this project is the potential to reconnect this stream to the North Fork Big Hole. And so right now this stream is getting captured by an irrigation ditch and it's not able to get to the North Fork. And the landowner here is very supportive of the reconnect. And I think, setting ourselves up by getting this area restored, doing the reconnect, this is going to be a nice little project. Hopefully we can get some West Slope Cuddy populations or some Arctic grayling populations established up there. It's a ways down the line, but it's all part of the project. All right, Eastern Pioneers. Pedro also talked about this one, but this is in partnership with the BLM and the Nature Conservancy. Basically, the BLM came out with their environmental assessment of the Eastern Pioneers, and in that document, they identified these reaches that could use riparian enhancement and riparian conifer encroachment projects. And we took that EA and ran with it, and we've identified reaches in Trapper Creek, Browns Gulch, and some private property in Lost Creek. And essentially what we're going to do is more of those process-based restoration structures, those BDAs, and those post-assisted log structures, basically in-stream, low-tech projects. And over the course of the next couple of years, we're going to install about 120 of those structures and also get a couple acres of riparian conifer encroachment done. I'm thinking that'll happen up here on BLM in Trapper Creek. So yeah, excited to get this one kind of going and get some of the youth employment program in Dillon on this one. Yeah, so that'll happen this summer as well. And then I'll end on Elkhorn Mine and Mill. Again, I've been basically kind of saying that we got the ball start rolling on this project, and now we have a lot of momentum. Last year, we were hedging our bets on getting the soils characterization done. The timing of our agreement with the Bureau of Reclamation and our field season didn't line up. So for sure, we're going to do it this year. And so what is this soils characterization? And that's kind of why I wanted to show you guys these maps, give you guys the visual of what we're actually going to do. So this is the mine and mill. This is the old mill site up there. I don't know how many of you guys are familiar, but essentially old mill, one of the biggest, I think it was the biggest operation for a little bit there. Gold and silver. And the U.S. Forest Service did some reclamation and restoration in this area in the early 2000s. But over the last couple of years with our work, our site assessments, our characterizations, we've identified that there's still old mine waste and tailings that exist up in this area, and they're contributing heavy metals to the stream. And so one of the things we need to do is find out how much of that soil is up there and where is it. And that's what we're going to do with this soils characterization. And so there's these red dots on this on these maps. These are areas where we're going to do it. And the red dots essentially are where our contractor is going to dig the pit, get a good soil horizon, and quantify how much soil is vertically extending and horizontally extending. Give us some estimates on how much we need to remove. So very necessary part of the design process in Elkhorn. And we're going to leave it up to the professionals to do this work. We're going to contract it out, but I'll definitely be there learning and watching. So that is my field season. That's kind of what our restoration program looks like for the year. And we'll be busy. Yeah. Any questions?
Bring in talk about the other component, the bio.
Yeah, this one, yeah, Pedro is, and we are working with some contractors actually out of Melrose who are going to, we have a grant with DNRC to go and employ basically these wattles that come from mycorrhizae fungus to hopefully absorb the heavy metals that are coming out of the adit at Elkhorn. And so they need to basically do a pilot study in the lab first and then go and deploy an on-site type of wattle. And so it's kind of a study experiment.
It's a pilot.
It's a pilot study.
Very much proof of concept. The literature shows that this can be done, that mycorrhizae are charged such that metal ions will just attach to it. And so it's been proven in the lab. It has not been proven like on an actual mine site. So let's go do that. And let's see where it goes. You know, these guys are Montana Bioagriculture Inc. They're native Butians that run the grain elevator in Melrose that produces high protein fish food out of. They do that by fermenting spent barley. So that fungal process just extracts extra proteins and they pelletize it, and it's a way to not have to feed fish to grow fish. Because that depletes the resource anyway. And we hope to have those guys here after some initial findings, probably in August, to show us kind of what they're coming up with. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, I think the partners that we're working with the Forest Service are excited about this project too. And they you know, depending on how this pilot goes, this could be part of the remedy, could be part of the restoration work too. So yeah, they're supportive.
All right. So, God, just a little bit over. Anything, do we have any new business or any other kind of comments before we kind of take a break for a little bit? And then we'll come back with Molly. Anything? Burning questions?
Is there anyone here who read the regs, is that, is there any class there? I didn't know if that was topic.
Yeah. For Zoom folks, there was a question about just the new hunting regs. They did some consolidation in this area. No one's read. Surprise, surprise. All right, folks, let's take 10, quick 10, have great conversations, and then I'm gonna have to make you stop your great conversations. Then we'll come back for Molly. All right, thank you. All right. All right, folks on Zoom, we're getting everybody out of the cookie jar and out of the coffee and into their seats. So we'll be starting back up here in just a second. Zoom is so great for getting to see people's facial expressions when they're trying to figure out technology up close. General looks of confusion from ecologists. Okay. All right. So this has been a long time coming, but we're going to hear about the Pintler Face project. Really excited about that. And I will just let Molly take it away.
Thank you very much. And thank you again, everybody, for having us. And it's good not to stand in the light of the projector. Things you forget about being in virtual land and then coming back in person. So again, thank you all for having us. If we have folks joining late on Zoom and I haven't met you yet, my name is Molly Ryan. I'm the Wisdom District Ranger. And tonight I have with me presenting on Pintler Face, Pam Fletcher. Hey, everybody. She is our forest soil scientist, but she was also the team leader for this project. And that role is critical. They are the right hands. They know to document the project inside out. So she's really my lead ramrod is what it comes down to. And then hopefully we'll have Anton Fletcher back with us. His computer was pushing updates. So we'll see. If he's not here, Pam and I will try to fill in for his portion, but you know, we'll just roll with it and it'll be great. So really a couple of the takeaways that we want to go over with this project are, what is the treatment going to look like on the ground? What can you expect to see over the next few years? Because it all won't be done overnight, right? It's going to be kind of this integrated step-by-step process to get everything done that we've worked through on the NEPA. And also what it'll really show is that community involvement and collaboration are so integral for these projects to be successful, both on the ground and what that really means in the big picture, which we'll kind of loop back to at the end, because this will show, you know, for our local community what this means, and then what does that mean at the forest level, the regional level, and just what does it really mean in the grand scale, and what can we do cross-boundary? Pedro and Ben talked about cross-boundary work being done. We'll tie into where those opportunities are with this project, with any project really. The point is that we have those conversations and we see what's possible. So I'm going to just touch real briefly on planning process, and then we'll kick it over to Pam to go into Pintler Face specifically. And there are so many details involved that we could spend a whole meeting just talking about aspen treatment. So we're going to go broad. So if there are any questions, please feel free to ask at any time during this meeting, after, or give us a call. So when we look at projects, the starting point really is, what is national and regional direction for us as an agency? And right now that is treatment and timber, fuels treatment, and then what other customer service opportunities can we present? That's a little bit more broad, but it could be like the Basin Creek project that we were just talking about outside of Butte, right? And that'll have a couple of fuels components, but it's more watersheds based and therefore, you know, is a service to the community. So then we go to our forest plan direction. What do we have in there for management on the ground in this particular area? Then we start to look at, for timber specifically, what's the suitability? What's the classification? Is it more, ooh, this has been really affected by beetles, we need to salvage, or is it still green? So we've got a little bit of time comparatively to beetle kill. So where are we going to go in that priority? Then we really start to look at those areas that need treatment. Think about borders. How big do we go? If we're going to go there, we should really think as big as we can, right? So for Pintler Face, for example, those north and south borders, pretty hard in the sand, right? We've got the Anaconda Pintler Wilderness in the north. To the south, we've got the forest boundary and private property, right? So that defines what we're analyzing on the Forest Service side. And then to the east and west, we again just looked at you know what, on this side, we have the Mount Hagen, that's a good place to start. And then working back west towards Wisdom, we thought, well, here's where the Music Rod Fire is. We probably could have gone to Chief Joseph Pass, but let's just stop here where the fire ran through and look at these 10 watersheds. So then you get into staffing. That's a key factor, right? All of our specialists. Who do we have? What other projects on the forest are they working on? Get the team together and then really dive into that analysis, public participation, field trips, and we work all the way through signature and implementation, which is where we are now with Pintler Face. I signed the decision September 9th, and the first sale has sold. There will be at least 3 timber sales with this project. There might be 4. Our staff is still looking at that. And let's see, the first sale sold for $1.3 million to a group out of Deerlodge. So that will be starting probably late July, early August is when we'll see that activity start. No, it was Iron Pine Logging is a group out of Deerlodge that bought the sale.
Well, so it's not the mills necessarily, but
Correct, yeah, it's not the mills. We put out the advertisement for the sales. People submit their bid packages, it's reviewed, and then the winner, if you will, is announced. So we'll be starting to see those other contracts and bid opportunities come over the next year, and then
we'll end up at some.
I'm pretty sure some might be, we'll have to see, but they end up at the mill, yes. With that, I will attempt to drive a PowerPoint for Pam and hopefully not blind her with the laser.
Don't do that.
I don't think you should have a laser.
I don't know if that's a good idea.
Okay, in the back, I think there are copies of the maps that we have of the project area. That it's such a massive project area that it's really tough to see anything on the screen, which is why we decided to do hard copies and print things off. And I think all of you in Zoom land hopefully have access to the electronic maps as well. So just a little bit of background on Pintler Face and where it is. The project area is located about 10 miles northwest of the community of White River. And it encompasses 10 different watersheds, starting with 10 Mile in the east and going all the way over to Plimpton Creek in the west. And so that whole front of the Pintler Mountains there, from the forest boundary up to the wilderness boundary, our environmental coordinator like to call it the rind, the melon rind of activity, like right in front of the wilderness there. So that whole, it's like a long skinny stripe of a project area, and it's almost 74,000 acres, the project area itself. So it's a pretty big piece of ground. So that's where it's located. And of course, it encompasses both, it's mostly in Deerlodge, but there's a little bit in Beaverhead County as well. So the purpose and need of Pintler Face is to move us towards achievement of forest plan goals and objectives, right? So basically, obviously, we were going to cut timber. So we have about, I guess, 3,500 acres on 40 different units of timber. And you also, so there's a timber, the commercial side of things, right? So 3,500 acres of that. But really, for every acre that we're harvesting commercial timber, we're doing over 2 acres of non-commercial treatments. And that's really focused mostly on conifer removal, conifer encroachment removal in sagebrush parks, in riparian areas, in aspen stands, willow stands. And like here's an example right here of unit R stands for riparian, unit R19. And in this particular unit, we would be looking to go for the conifers. We cut them down and pile them and burn those piles. So that's a good part of what we're doing in Aspen. And I'm not sure, I think also back there, there's
Yes.
a handout that says selected vegetation treatments at the top. And so this goes over all the different treatments that we're doing in the project and describes, names of treatments and describes how they would be implemented. And then you'll see a table in there that has all the different units and how many acres and stuff, what type of vegetation we're treating. And I know you guys are interested in aspen, right? So you'll see that there are several aspen units. They're the A units. And it shows up as like 564 acres of aspen treatment. But really there's quite a bit more than that because all of the riparian units that are listed in there that are denoted with the R somewhere in here, all of those have an aspen component as well. So it's a little bit tricky because it's easy to get confused between the treatment type, like whether we're, we talk about they were cutting and burning piles and concentrations, or we're slashing and doing that kind of thing. It's easy to get that confused with the vegetation type. So apologies for all of the terminology we're throwing at you, but there are quite a few, probably a couple thousand acres of aspen being treated through this project. Okay, let's see. I don't know. Should we show? Yeah. So here's another riparian unit, and this one is more of a willow stand, as you can see. And so the idea there would be, again, cutting down the encroaching conifers, piling them and burning them. So here's a sagebrush park. And the idea here would be to do a broadcast burn. And that's because you can see all these conifers. And it's just easier and more effective to just run a fire through this. And what you can't see is all the hundreds and probably thousands of little seedlings underneath the canopy here. And so, and Diane can attest to this, but what we've learned in the past is if we don't run a broadcast burn through this, we miss a lot of the baby conifers on the ground. So doing a broadcast burn treatment is a lot more effective in achieving the goal. And so in a unit like this, you could expect to see about 50% of it burned, because we burn in the spring when there's still patches of snow. And so you get a nice mosaic of burned and unburned ground. So that's an example of a sagebrush broadcast burn.
Is that type of treatment and these other type of treatment, are these like kind of one and done? Like we came in, we did the work, mission accomplished, we're out? Or, is there another revisit?
I think that's a really good question.
Yeah.
I think sometimes they will go in and do the slashing and have to come back and do the burning later.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the shelf life is for, like how long those treatments are effective. Yeah, I was gonna guess 15 years,
Yeah.
but I'm glad Diane's here to answer that question. Because that is a good question.
15 to 20 year, no maintenance needed on a burn like that.
Yeah, and so for people, I don't know if everyone on Zoom could hear that, but the answer is 15 to 20 years of effectiveness for a treatment like that when we go and broadcast burn.
And we're starting to think more about writing in maintenance at the forefront of NEPA for that reentry if it's needed.
Yeah.
So we learned that a lot over the years. Oh, it'd be nice if we could go back and do some maintenance, but we didn't account for it in the original NEPA. So, always learning every step and adding into the next project cumulatively.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, because it is such a big job to do the planning into these projects that, like, the more we could, plan for that and roll that into the planning, the more effective we'll be long term. So yeah, definitely. Go ahead, yeah, next slide. And so here's an example. You can't see the title here in the room because of the Zoom thing, but basically it says aspen before on the left here, before treatment, And then after on the right, after it's been, the conifers have been cut. And here's another one. And so this is a different terminology, lop and scatter. So this just basically means going in and cutting down the trees and scattering them. There's not enough really to burn, and so it's just easier just to go in and cut what's there and sort of scatter it around. Okay, and I'll get to that. Okay, so that's sort of a quick, 30,000 foot overview of some of the treatment types that we're doing in Pintler Face. We also took on travel management in the project because, and some of you are probably well aware of this, but in the eastern part of the project area, it's acquired land. It has a long history of management, and there are a lot of old roads that look something like this. And they're on our system in infra, meaning it counts as far as our database as an open motorized road. And that is a problem for wildlife security. And so one of the things we did with this decision was decommission and take off the system. I think it was like 173 miles. Yeah, 172.6 miles of routes. And at first it was a little bit of a public concern, as you might imagine, because people were like, why are you closing 173 miles of road? And we're like, well, really a lot of it, like 80% of it looks like this. And that really helps, like field trips and stuff, clarify that, no, we're not shutting down roads that, for the most part, that people are, extensively using. These are roads that are already effectively closed by vegetation. So,
make sure
right, and so that's a really good question. So we have a database that has route by route, and it for each route talks about like what condition it's in, if it's grown in, and what kind of, like some of them needed rocks or berms or gates. And I honestly would be lying if I said I knew how many of those were, but a lot of them look like this already. You're right. Yeah, that we would leave those in place because it's already effectively closed. And so
It's just a discount. I mean,
it's
really like removing it.
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
It's a paper desk exercise. That's absolutely what it is. And so one of the things that, if you guys are curious, and I think we still have it up on our project website, is we have some geo-aware PDF maps. And if you have a Venza or an app like Avenza, you can download those maps and actually go out in the woods and look at where the treatments are and where the roads are that are decommissioned with Molly's decision and all of that, just on your own. It's pretty handy, actually. The technology, this makes me sound old, but the technology has changed so quickly for the better in this case, in terms of like a huge project area like this, being able to go out and kind of see what we're actually doing. Let's see. Oh, so that's an idea of what we did with the travel management. I thought I'd go over just really quickly the project timeline, just to give you an idea of how long this project has been going on. So back in 2010, the forest did a forest-wide rapid assessment. And I don't know if any of you have heard about that, but basically it was kind of in the height of the beetle epidemic. And the idea was to identify opportunities for where we might be able to go and get salvage lodge pull before the trees lost their value. And so Pintler Face was one of the locations that was identified in this broad forest look at where there might be opportunities. And then in 2012, the forest did, and I was the team lead on this too. I kind of seem to have a bad habit of doing that. We did a watershed assessment in the Seymour, Sullivan, and Deep Creeks part of the project area. So that very eastern part of the project area, because there's a restoration key watershed and also 1 or 2 fish key watersheds. And so we wanted to go in there and see what opportunities we might have to improve conditions there. And so some of the recommendations from that watershed assessment, and this is also located on the project website too, if you want to check it out, rolled over into the Pintler Face project. And so about the same time, like 2011 through 2013, the district was doing a district-wide look at roads and looking at sort of like a cost-benefit analysis of access, the benefit of having the access versus any like resource type concerns or routes. And so for each route, each resource would have information in there about any concerns or anything like that to help drive a decision towards travel management. And so that effort was used, like in Pintler Face, we took that information from that effort and further defined it and looked at more routes and stuff, because I don't think we totally finished that effort. So that sort of formed the basis of the travel management that we did with this project. So that was about 2011 to 2013. And then we started, I think we scoped this in 2015 or 2016, right around in there, and had a lengthy scoping period to allow for plenty of time for people to comment any of their ideas or thoughts about the project. And we had field trips that summer in 2016. And then also in 2017, we did 5 public meetings, Butte, Dillon, Wisdom, Wise River, and Anaconda, and just had open house style public meetings where anybody could come and ask questions. We had all kinds of maps and just ideas about what we wanted to do with the project, and got a lot of public feedback at those meetings. And so that was really, really beneficial. And so then that set us up to get the draft EA out in November of 2017. And so then after that, we were able to respond to comments and respond to public comments and really look at refining the proposed action based on those public comments. And then we had other forest priorities that kind of came up that took our specialist time, and we got considered occupied by Canada Lynx. And so the forest had to reconsult on Canada Lynx on the forest plan. And so this project and all of our projects were kind of hung up for a while we waited for that consultation to come through. And so then it took us until July, I think, of last year to get the updated EA out for objection. And we went through the objections process. And then Molly was able to sign it in September of last year. And then she told you about what's going on with implementation. So that's kind of like a quick 10-minute summary of the project. And like I said, we still have the project website up that has the final decision notice, the environmental assessment, the watershed assessment, all the public comments we got, our responses to those comments. And if you're curious to learn more and like reading, the decision notice is a really good place to start, because it has in it all the information about how we modified the selected alternative that Molly signed based on working with Fish, Wildlife, and Parks and the public comments that we got. So with that, does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
I'm just curious about the non-commercial trees.
So the question, just for everybody, so everyone on Zoom hears as well, is a question about the non-commercial treatments and whether we are implementing those or not yet. And I'm going to hand the mic to Molly.
So not quite yet, but what we are doing is planning out here, like I'll use fuels as an example. Now that the decision is signed, my fuels AFMO, Assistant Fire Management Officer, can go through and say, all right, this is the area I want to start in. This is the means. I'm probably going to contract out this work. So, you know, our crews for this particular project might not be doing the on the ground portion. They'll be working on other priorities that contribute towards that fuels workload to the forest. But it's getting the stage set so it can be implemented in probably fiscal year, which is October 1, 23, just getting everything lined up and ready to go. And then we'll also have to work a little bit around the commercial part to make sure if there's any work that we need to go in and do first, that gets taken care of. So it'll really probably kickstart the non-commercial stuff in the following year, 23, but we're ready to go with it. It just won't be very quickly this year.
And you think you guys will handle some of that in-house and you'll contract out?
Correct. Yes. The question was if we will do a mixture of contract work and forest employee work, and the answer is yes. Yep. It really goes back to the capacity of our employees and what can we feasibly do. Great example this year, district lit on fire. So what the focus is going to be for quite a few of our employees is what is that post-fire work? And if we have time and if there's interest, I do have some burn severity maps and we can talk a little bit about that if anybody wants. But so we really need to focus in on that work and also catching up to the priorities that they had hoped to work on last year, but had to stop in order to engage in the fires. So that's why, and especially for Pintler base, it made sense. We'll handle the contract side and lay out to the crews what we want to see and what the task is, but we need to focus ourselves here. So, absolutely.
So, you know, this question, so do you have any idea when it was possible to work these
Timber sales?
Yeah, I don't know the exact timeline of when the next timber sales will be advertised, but the timber shop is actively working on those, and we'll be seeing those come out. I'm gonna imagine in the next couple of months, the next one, and then stagger after that. So really over the next 9 months, I would say to a year at the most, we'll be seeing that happen.
And then like, those are based on geography, I imagine, like take this chunk of the project area and do commercial or they.
Yeah, so with the sales and the layout, they really just kind of go by what makes sense to go after first. Where's the road infrastructure? Where does the least amount of work? There's a lot of factors that I don't 100% know. And if we do get Anton back on, he could help out with that. But yeah, they really look at that. And this one's ready to go. We have this information. The package is ready. Let's get this out on the streets.
Same for the pre-commercial then that work. It's not going to be, you know, one pre-commercial project for this whole thing. It's going to be
right. It'll be done in stages. So everything, the aspen, the pre-commercial, the burning, everything will kind of happen in stages and go across the landscape, because a big part is going to be what are the conditions. So with burning, for example, do we have the appropriate conditions to meet those objectives that we're trying to get to? If not, maybe on the east side, maybe we do on the west side. So we let it gives you quite a bit of flexibility to go where you can be successful and then just wait in other areas.
What was the historic composition of the Pintler base in regards to aspen?
Ooh, historic composition of the aspen
In the whole composition.
trees. Gosh, that is a great question that I'm probably going to have to get back to you on. I'm going to really have to go back and ask a couple of folks because I don't have that historical data of what it was compared to the stage it is at now. So if that's okay, I can dig into that and get back to the group.
Also, in your descriptions, if you started to lean towards removing more conifers from the riparian areas, and decreasing the buffer that people feel your sales or asking you to leave. Are coming from the Aspen, excuse me, the conifer approach from the riparian areas and on the small crests. Really possible.
Agreed, yeah, and that is a big part of the purpose and need of this project and in those riparian areas is to really knock back that conifer encroachment and let those riparian species really try to flourish.
Sounds like you guys put this all together before 2017 for comment. Since then, a lot of your beetle killed trees have blown over. What are you folks going to do with all that downfall? I mean, it's horrible.
So the question is what the forest plans to do with the beetle kill that has blown down since then from 2017 when it went out for comment, correct?
Correct.
So, you know, the treatments don't differentiate between the tree has to be standing versus on the ground. So when we go in, what we want to look at is what is the objective of that particular treatment. So the short answer is we're hoping to clean it up by the means necessary, whether it be burning. The commercial folks could sure take it. They just bought the timber within that area. So it'll really kind of depend, but what we hope to see across this landscape is a lot of that downfall does get cleaned up as well.
That's my following question. When this is all said and done, what kind of a monitoring system do you have, like to look for weeds and that on all these projects?
Great question. What kind of monitoring do we have in place during and after this is all said and done for weeds? And I have a great range staff and employees we hired during the summer to go out, and they will look for known infestations, but then within that area, if they notice anything different, they'll map it, and it won't just be ourselves, it'll be other specialists that are out there in the area sharing that information. So if the hydrologist is out doing monitoring and he sees something, he will be checking in saying, hey, this is here. It's really a lot of communication like that in field work. So, sorry, the lighting's so bad, I can't.
Basically, so in the decision notice, we have a design feature to address invasive plants, and it talks about that we'll be treating to limit infestation and spread for a minimum of 3 years following implementation. Pre and post implementation treatment will be utilized to minimize the spread of invasive plants. I'll check and see if we have more in there. Yeah, there are several design features, like a page and a half, almost two. No, it's in the decision notice, right? I can.
Yes, it's in the bigger decision notice document, and you know, regardless with invasives or any other kind of monitoring, we're never going to fully walk away. We'll always be out checking, always be out looking, always noticing change conditions, what works, what maybe hasn't worked, and how that can carry forward into the future in that area or in other areas. Do we have any questions out in the Zoom chat at all?
I just don't know. Chat, but
Or raise hands?
what do you want? Anton can join.
Oh, okay. Any other questions? Yes, Diane?
What about cheatgrass after burning? Are you guys going to do some new products out and treat cheatgrass? Any plans to tackle that?
Not concrete plans right now, and we have to, this just came up the other day, we really have to go back and look at the weed EA and see there's some differing opinions about what we can do with cheatgrass, specifically in the burn treatments, and what subsequent documentation that we'll need to use some of those chemicals. So it's definitely on our mind, but the exact tactic has not been decided as of yet, but we can keep y'all posted on that.
And I know we set aside some units for personal use, posting homes and for renters. And to get, did those stay out of the commercial sales, or are they still being set aside for personal use, postal units for people to come on?
Yeah, so personal use post and pole units now is folks can come in and say, I need post and poles, and this is the area I'm thinking of. So then our folks go out with them, walk it, identify it, say, yes, this is okay, these are your boundaries, come back in, get your permit. So that's how we're handling it on the forest now.
You set aside some units of fish trap and senior from the in the commercial sales.
Post and poles in the commercial units. We're gonna have to go back and
Yeah.
double check, because really how we have been doing it is just like I say, folks do come in, so. All right, well, is there, did you have another question? Pedro?
Yeah, just sort of, so how I sort of described some of the partnership agreements and the work that we're doing where, you know, like the BLM, for example, they're going in, we knew they're gonna do juniper work, and we're just kind of housed with this water storage stuff and these in-stream structures. And we are always, you know, kind of like chasing those projects. But if you didn't write those into the EA, right, how, just sort of mechanically or process based, like if we go into a unit, we know you guys are cutting, we know there's going to be a bunch of slash, and we notice a terribly incised system that we could help fix. How can we make that happen, given that the decision's already done and, you know, without kind of kicking off a giant?
Yeah, that is a great question about how now after the NEPA is done, if folks see something that might need to be addressed, how that works.
Yeah.
And I want to, if I can table that just for a moment, because that's a great segue. If we can pull up the 5-year out-year plan, the other attachment.
Yeah.
And I will ask Anton to pop on the microphone, but I want to kind of set the stage while he's pulling this up.
That's this guy?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Tana, you got that one too? Oh, I think we're sharing here.
Yes, yes, we're sharing. Yeah.
That's terrible.
So that's okay. We really just need the colors.
Okay.
The colors are the important bit.
Yes.
So I want to kind of go back to what I was speaking about at the beginning. So what? What does it mean? Now we've done this project. Doesn't mean we just, you know, kick back and just do the implementation, right? This is just, you go to the next. What does it mean? Where do we do? What did we learn from these projects that we can carry forward into the next one? So I really wanted Anton to come on and explain this. And I will caveat, this is not set in stone. This is just discussions the forest leadership has been discussing about what are those key areas that need treatment and for what purpose, where we think we're going to go. And if the, let's see, so the color coding actually denotes those out years where we think we're going to get there, be able to claim them as targets. So Anton Brennick is our Forest Staff Officer for Timber and Engineering. So Anton, I will kick it over to yourself.
Yeah, no, I'll hold the mic up. Anton, you should be good to go here.
All right, can you hear me okay, Pedro?
Yep.
Okay, great. Yeah, and sorry, I had a computer update after 45 minutes. I'm back, so I will kind of launch into it. And what I'll provide is a little bit of background, kind of a chronology and a sequence, how we ended up with what you have presented up there on the screen. So basically, the BBRD, the Beaverhead-Deerlodge National Forest, has had a 5-year timber program of work for a very long time, which focuses on timber, and it also accents the fuels component. And then we look at it, we update it, review it on a quarterly type of scenario. We modify it as needed, looking at a bunch of different variables. If our targets shift from regional office directive or something gets held up in courts, what have you. And again, this 5-year plan is always a fluid 5-year plan. So we're currently looking at fiscal years 22 through 26 federal fiscal years. That then feeds into a regional database that then goes to the Washington office. And just for the group tonight, you know, if we look at the Beaverhead-Deerlodge National Forest outputs, we do about 80,000 CCF a year in timber, which is about 3,000 acres of treatment, and about 8 to 14,000 acres of fuels. Wildfire would be separate than that. So that's just kind of the baseline, the 10,000 foot view. And then what you're looking at there in front of you is kind of a broader context, 20 to 30,000 foot level view. That's what we call our OYP, our out year planning framework. So kind of how that all came about was Regional Forester Martin brought all 10 forests in Region 1 together about 2 years ago in Missoula. And she was trying to figure out a way, and us collectively, how we could edge match and activate proper and common variables across shared units, meaning all 10, to start analyzing things in kind of a broader context or scale, while using as many possible similar variables as possible, just to be more efficient and all that good stuff. So that's what you have out in front of you there. So what we did is, like I said, utilized a bunch of consistent variables, did a bunch of ArcGIS analysis and all that, kind of had it hanging there behind the scenes. Then we also I came back from Missoula. We met a bunch of us internal folks at the Forest Service, forgot about all the data, and said if we were going to start drawing blobs on a map, determine optimal or forward-looking areas of interest or project areas, where do we go next? So we kind of did that blindly without the data. At the same time, we also brought in a bunch of externals that had a bunch of wisdom and knew the forest really well, BHWC working group, members like that. They came up with the same blobs. Then subsequent to that, we activate the model with a bunch of bells and whistles in it to try to see how congruent our calls were with what the actual data was supporting, because it's just a model. And the neat thing that came about there is that it was very congruent. We had a very, very tight match spatially when we look at richness and all that. So that's what Molly has up on the screen there. So that's kind of a long sequential process that we went through regarding the out year planning database framework that is there, that then perpetually and constantly feeds our 5-year timber program of work, as I alluded to. So up there on the screen that Molly has, we have 17 future out year project areas identified. They're prioritized by north and south zone. So we kind of split it out to look at the 2 separate portions of the forest. Again, it's a huge forest, so we kind of look at it in the zoned scenario, if you will. Also, part of this is kind of looking at it as a portfolio. So we'd like to probably keep it about 60 to 80% fixed with those projects you have in front of you, but at the same time, leave room to be adaptable and bring in new other non-fixed variables or projects. So some real life examples would be when we have fire salvages that occur, we would walk them in like we're doing this year on Trail Creek. Also, the Basin Creek project is something new that isn't on the screen in front of Molly. So like I said, I look at that as our fixed portfolio, but we stay fluid, bring other things in. And then again, that kind of precipitates our shorter term 5-year plan. Some of the variables within the model that we look at would be overall acreage, WUI acreage, which is wild and urban interface, fire regime groups, fire condition class, hydro variables, timber volumes, forest plan designations. There's a whole laundry list. Them are kind of the main tenets that we use to kind of drive spatially where we're going to go next. And then we look at all them quantifiable variables in the background as well. So that's what you're looking at there. And then the other nice thing too, and I think Molly passed out some copies, is that at the same time, everything up there on that spreadsheet has a spatial component to it. So we can look at the scattering of projects across the whole entire 3.34 million acres. And then on the fly, like I said, look at it in a fluid way, and we can start betting it with other variables that come into play, like Montana Forest Action Plan, or if we get new data sets, and we can always kind of retrain what we're doing and making sure we're going forth in the right light and doing the right things based on, again, a non-static ecological environment and just kind of the way we do business. So kind of a lot going on there, but again, in a nutshell, we have a 5-year program of work that we're constantly retooling that. And then the broader out year planning framework that again is looking out 10 to 20 years. So that suite of projects there would get us through our current forest plan. Our forest plan that we're currently working under is a 2009 forest plan. And we're probably about the midpoint life of it, I'm guessing. You usually get about 25 years out of a plan. So we have a good futuristic lens that again will keep it fluid, but we've done a lot of work, and I think we have a pretty good plan moving forth on where a majority of our future projects have a high probability of being across the landscape. Hopefully that helps.
Oh yeah, that was awesome.
That was super awesome. I hadn't heard, I mean, I loved hearing just kind of the, almost like a citizen science and then real science and all of it kind of coming together. And it seems like they matched. I mean, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, you know, I was thinking it would be about 60 to 80% congruent, and realistically, it was probably about 70 to 90%, the upper end of that range. And then, like I said, if you look at like the Montana Forest Action Plan priorities and you overlay it, yeah, there's a lot of good overlap there. So I think we're doing things the right way.
Are there any questions for Anton specifically, or anything about this map where it shows where we're pondering to go in the out year for future projects? Okay, well, hearing none, again, this ties back to really some of the key messages. Planning does take a long time, but we're always trying to think out well ahead into the future and be ready to go. So as we finish some of these decisions, start the implementing, hopefully the areas that we're going to go are already into the planning process, and we have that kind of goal in mind. And that is also back to participation, collaboration, any ideas, any thoughts, whether it be specifically on the actions we're proposing on the forest, really bringing in cross-boundary work. If we don't know, we can't see what the possibilities are. So the key is make your comments heard through the process, call any of your local Forest Service, line officers or employees and be like, what about this? What is possible? So which does segue into what you were getting at, Pedro. We've worked a lot in a lot of our projects, even though they might not seem like it on the surface, really do go cross-boundary at some particular point. We either edge match with some of our sister agencies. East Pioneer is a great example. So we did a concurrent NEPA process with the BLM. I know some of you folks were out on those field trips with us. So we did a separate decision, and ours was more focused on the fuels treatment. But if there's something else that we see out there, like a riparian on the forest that wasn't covered in NEPA, let's have a chat, because it could be a smaller NEPA decision that we could work on. Might not be fast, but we can plot that out. That's just really, really key. I get a lot of questions about, well, what can we do on our private ground? That's a great question, right? Because really for us, the biggest task is doing this NEPA process right before we can do the work. So on the flip side, there's a gentleman over by Wisdom that borders up against some of our forest-wide aspen units that we've cleared. It's like, this is great. I would love to do some of this on my property. What do I have to do? Well, yep, you can call these groups. Yep, call Ben, talk to the state. Really, let's reach out and see, because there are probably some funding opportunities that you can work with. And then really, it's just, it's your land. You get to set the stage of who comes on and does that work, what that looks like. So, the ecosystems and the treatments don't need to stop at the imaginary lines. And we all know for health, it would be better if they can go across. And there are going to be, I think, really a lot more opportunities coming down. Like you say, there's the infrastructure bill. There's direction that we're to treat more acres and more acres on our side, right? More funding coming from us. What does that look like? So, really, like I tell my folks when we're planning some projects, dream big. You know what? If we're going to go out there, let's look across landscapes and really see what we can do.
Well, I guess touching on that infrastructure bill, will that dictate how these projects move forward, or the size of these, or anything? What's, I guess you don't know what comes down the pipe for that, but obviously you would expect how that 5-year plan.
Correct. So the question was, how does the infrastructure bill affect either this out year or some of these projects? And we're still getting info, right? Because it was the initial, this bill is signed, here it is. But some of that info is still kind of slow to trickle down with what that looks like. The funding isn't just going to come all at once. It's probably going to trickle. So we're still navigating that ourselves of what that means. So we'll have to be a little bit fluid as we learn more. I'm sure at the time it might change the situation and the conversations a little bit.
Okay, so these projects coincide with this.
They do overlap. And so so the colors aren't specific projects per se. They're not hard boundary lines like Pintler Face, for example, but those are the areas that we want to go to, right? The areas that we want to go to next. So those boundaries would still need to be defined a little bit with all of those factors.
I know, something, maybe that money ends up in state, through state grant programs, which is what's happened with some of the ARPA and other funds. And we've run into that, I think Ben's got a private forestry project lined up, but the DNRC, they won't grant out money unless there's a parallel forest action happening nearby. And so in that case, we kind of have to wait for the Selway Saginaw project to get further along to then be able to address private forestry work. And that's our bread and butter right there. And the more of that kind of stuff we can identify, that really keeps us rocking.
Well, I would hope that some of these dollars would beef up your staffing so that, we're increasing the pace and scale and doing meaningful work on the ground, but you've got the staffing to address the need.
Right.
Yeah, we're having a lot of conversations nationally about what that means, what staffing looks like. There's a lot of moving pieces and realizations around that right now, so. Support is always welcome, so.
Yeah, let us know when where. Obviously, contemplate any, letters to write at the right times.
Yeah. Well, that's what we have for you folks, unless there are any other questions. And like I say, I want to be mindful of people's time, if not in this venue, either another meeting or, privately, if you do want to see some of those burn severity maps from this last year and what some of our post-fire restoration is going to look like. You're going to see a lot of that this summer in both fire areas, between salvage, between fixing roads, stabilizing watersheds. And I will also throw out to this group commercial mushroom harvest on Trail Creek. That's going to be probably an impact this year. Right now, I'm planning for worst case scenario, setting up designated camp areas, figuring out sanitation, law enforcement, working with the Bitterroot and the Salmon Chalice and the Park Service, really everybody. And then we'll see what the conditions are. Trail Creek and Haystack on B will be commercial. Everything else will be personal use.
All of Trail Creek is going to be commercial.
Yes. Well, it was the easiest way for me to police it, so.
There's no personal.
Correct. Yep, personal will be on Alder, will be on Black Mountain, will be on the other burns, but we really felt like with the access, Trail Creek, especially being along 43, right next to the riparian, I just have fear. So commercial, it was really the better avenue for us to be able to say, yes, you can go here, but then we can get better law enforcement present. We can say, you can only camp here, potentially. I mean, it's going to be a bear to try to police, but.
I'm not that familiar with mushroom. Why can't it just be open to both? To both personal and.
They do that sometimes.
Yeah, it can be. And some of it really just comes down to the impact on my employees that have to sell it. So I, want to focus the commercial use out of the Wisdom office, really have those folks go there. Personal use may be available online. That's still undetermined at this point. But then I feel like it gives also members of the public that do just want personal use permits, you could go to any office and get that. So it was really kind of also about the impact to my employees and what we're asking them to do.
I was going to bring Chauncey. Well, maybe I'll just get into it.
Yeah, we could talk about commercial permits and how that'll work later, but.
You could physically in half. Right, for personal.
Is the commercial permit, is it pretty pricey? Like, is the forest benefiting from that?
Yes, and I haven't seen the current year cost per permit, but we do get that back specifically to the unit, and it can be used for many, it's a forest product account. that we can in turn use back on the forest. And even if the bidder is offered to sell some permits out of their Darby office, which I think will help quite a bit and kind of spread the traffic out quite a bit, they will still be coded, if you will, so that money comes back to us because the fire didn't get on the bidder, but they're willing to help us out and they're going to be affected as well. So there is some benefit. It's, yeah.
There's people that make all their, they make a year's salary.
It's a big business, yeah, for sure. Yes, Dean.
When is the Selway Saginaw sale, timber sale coming up shortly?
No, in short, no, there's no current sale for Selway Saginaw because, yeah, nope. So that is still, I would say, probably at the 3/4 mark of the planning process right now. So what has gone on in the last few months is there's still work behind the scenes going on with that, particularly with mapping and public comments, kind of cleaning that up. But what needs to happen first, before we can really kick that over the finish line, is the Greenhorn project needs to go into objection first before Selway. It's at that later stage, and then we'll have to do a little bit of reconsulting on the forest because the amount of temp roads that were allowed at the forest level, there's a cap. So all of our projects have to fall into this cap for temp roads, particularly with effects to grizzly bears in disturbance. And we're at that cap. Selway Saginaw would have gone over by about 20 miles. So we need to adjust that on a forest scale. It's similar to the links consultation that Pam talked about. So it's probably about 3 months behind, and we'll see what the consultation takes, but it'll be probably a year before we see a sale. Non-commercial on the sell side?
Yeah.
What, so the whole NEPA decision has to be done before we can do anything. Yes. Yeah. Yep. Correct. Yeah. So a minor bump, but one that we can certainly work with and keep moving forward. One of the things that comes up that we just work through.
This Pintler face didn't get litigated.
Pintler face has not been litigated. I know we need to knock on the wood, but
Wait, can it still?
technically it could be still, yes, but the longer it goes, the sale has sold, the likelihood decreases, but there's always that possibility. All right, well, we appreciate your guys' time here and in Zoom land tonight. And like I say, open door policy, any questions about this, anything, give a holler. If I don't know the answer, we'll find it out. I will follow up on the historical Aspen question and get back to the group. And if there's anything else we can help with, certainly happy to.
Thank you.
All right, well, thanks everybody for coming, kicking this year off right, and we'll see you in March. March is the 16th, and it's the Western Rivers Conservancy. This is the group that just purchased the Plymouth cow-calf camp, and they also purchased the Split Diamond in Wise River, and they are going to be, their objective is to convert it to forest, and we've been just talking to them about what can we do in the meantime before it goes to the forest and make actions happen. So they'll be talking to us maybe remotely, maybe in person. Yeah. It's the Western Rivers Conservancy. Those are their first 2 Montana projects. It's kind of a new player. Anyway, Zoom land.
At 7.
Oh yeah, and in March we're at 7. Daylight savings will have kicked in. I'd like to go up and look at it and with them when they come out to look at their project manager has never actually seen the site. So I'm kind of in contact with them to go look as soon as we can when they come out here. I'll let you know. Folks on Zoom, thank you so much for being with us. Anton, thank you for chiming in. Lisa, thank you. Good to see you here, and we'll hope to get you down here in person sometime. And everyone else have a great night. Paul and Sandy, hello. We'll see you guys next month. Take care.